Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the third episode of Rise Records. I'm Riley. Thank you so much for joining me again. This is the show where I discuss the albums that have shaped my life. And on today's episode, we are going back to May 1969 when three voices, three songwriters, and three very different musical backgrounds collided to create one of the most influential debuts in music history: Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Now, this wasn't just another folk record. It captured a place. And that place was California in the late 60s, where the hippie dream met the sun-drenched hills of Laurel Canyon. Out of that moment, and out of those harmonies, came what would be known as the California sound. To understand the impact of Crosby, Stills, and Nash's debut, we need to rewind a little. The late 60s were chaotic, and California was at the center of it all. Up north, San Francisco was still glowing with psychedelic energy. Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, they embodied the wild, improvisational side of the counterculture. But in Los Angeles, something different was happening. In the hills above Hollywood, in a place called Laurel Canyon, you could find a different tribe of musicians. They weren't chasing electric freakouts. They were writing songs on acoustic guitars and gathering around kitchen tables, blending folk and rock into something more intimate. This is where David Crosby, Stephen Stills, and Graham Nash found each other. Crosby had been kicked out of the Byrds for being too outspoken, too experimental, and, well, too Crosby. Stephen Stills was licking his wounds after his band Buffalo Springfield imploded and he was frustrated by band drama but bursting with ideas. And Graham Nash had left England, leaving behind the Hollies, and he was hungry for some kind of artistic freedom. There's a famous story about the night that these three first sang together, which is naturally disputed by the three of them, of course. The most well-known story was that it was at Joni Mitchell's house in Laurel Canyon, with Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas playing host. Stills and Crosby were singing a new tune Stephen wrote called You Don't Have to Cry. Nash asked them to sing it again, and by the third time he joined in and added his high harmony. Suddenly, these three voices locked together like puzzle pieces. Everyone in the room felt it. Something new had just been born. So, what exactly do I mean when I say the California sound? Well, it's a term that gets used in different ways. Early on, people used to describe the Beach Boys, the surf harmonies, and sun-kissed optimism of the early 60s. But by the time Crosby, Stills, and Nash arrived, California meant something else. Their sound was warm, but introspective. The harmonies were lush, but the lyrics often carried longing or doubt. It was music that sounded like a canyon evening sunset fading into the night, guitars echoing off the hills. Unlike the psychedelic chaos of San Francisco at the time, this was more precise, more song-driven. But it wasn't slick pop either. It had credibility, roots in folk, jazz, and rock, and it caught on. Crosby, Stills, and Nash didn't just invent this in isolation. They were part of a larger scene. Joni Mitchell, Jackson Browne, Carole King, all of them were shaping this acoustic-centered, harmony-rich sound in Laurel Canyon. But CSN's debut was the moment it crystallized. It gave the California scene an identity, one that would carry it into the 1970s with bands like the Eagles, who took the formula of harmony, introspection, and California cool to the top of the charts. So without any further ado, let's dig into this record. I'm going to go through song by song and just basically indulge in what I think is an absolutely fantastic album. Their debut album opened with Stephen Stills' composition Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. The first thing I immediately love about this song is the name and how it plays on words. Stills wrote it about Judy Collins, a folk singer he was in love with and unfortunately losing at the time. And so he wrote a bunch of different little songs and sort of like, I guess you could say, he pasted them all together. And it became a suite. So the name is Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, but it's not sweet as in like confectionery sweet. It's sweet as in musical sweet. And I love that. I love that play on words so much. It was one of those things where I looked at it and I was like, man, I wish I came up with that. That's so cool. But, you know, it clocks in at 7 minutes long with multiple sections that weave together themes of love and heartbreak. It begins tender and confessional with the line, It's getting to the point where I'm no fun anymore. I am sorry. Sometimes it hurts so badly I must cry out loud. I am lonely. And then moves into more intricate vocal layering with the immortal phrase, I am yours, you are mine, you are what you are. And by the end, it's almost jubilant. What's remarkable is that despite its complexity, it feels so effortless. I remember thinking that the first time I heard it as well. I thought, man, this sounds so easy to do. I could do it. I cannot, and I haven't tried. Anyway, this track announced that Crosby, Stills and Nash weren't just another folk group. They were aiming for something ambitious. The second track, Marrakesh Express, brought Graham Nash's light and playful energy. Inspired by a train trip he'd taken in Morocco, it's full of bright imagery straight off the bat in the first verse. Looking at the world through the sunset in your eyes, travelling the train through clear Moroccan skies. Ducks and pigs and chickens call, animal carpet wall to wall, American ladies 5 foot tall and blue. The instrumentation of the song seeks to embody Nash's lyrics through an Eastern vibe and a sort of like buoyant flow carried by the drumming to resemble a train ride. Stephen Stills was responsible for much of the musicianship, adding a distinctive, unique sounding riff played on 2 overdubbed electric guitars, an organ, piano, and bass. Their label at the time, Atlantic Records, pushed this as the album's first single, and I think it charted modestly. Critics at the time were mixed, as some found it too whimsical, but in my opinion, it gave the record an immediate burst of colour and energy. Fun fact though, it was actually rejected by Nash's former band The Hollies before he left, as they thought it wouldn't be commercial enough. It was this song and I think another one further down called Lady of the Island which they rejected, and that was sort of like a factor in Graham leaving that band. The song today feels like a postcard from a more innocent corner of the 60s. And then comes Crosby's Guinevere. Now, I have to say, this is probably my favourite love song ever written. As haunting as it sounds, it's also dreamlike and hypnotic. It was written about 3 different women in Crosby's life, his late girlfriend Christine Hinton, Joni Mitchell, and an unnamed third. One of the great things about this song is that it doesn't follow standard chord progressions, tunings, or timings. Crosby used an unusual guitar tuning that gave it an otherworldly, suspended kind of quality. That tuning is E, B, D, G, A, D. I like to refer to it as Cros tuning, and I've used it actually to write a couple of songs myself. I've got an acoustic guitar that was my brother's that I have put into Cros tuning forever, and I've called it Cros, and so I've got like a acoustic guitar in standard tuning, and then I've got Cros. And so I break out Cros whenever I want to play Guinevere on stage or one of my compositions. David's lyrics in this song are like so imagery driven. Take these lines from the first verse, for instance. Guinevere had green eyes, like yours, my lady, like yours. She'd walk down through the garden in the morning after it rained. Peacocks wandered aimlessly underneath an orange tree. Why can't she see me? They're probably less about storytelling and more about the overall mood. I think that David Crosby was really good at writing music as like an atmosphere. You know what I mean? And the vivid imagery that he would come up with was just incredible. It's one of those things. I got into Crosby and CSN after he passed away. I did it with Tom Petty as well. After he passed, that was when I got into his music. I just wish that I was able to see David Crosby in his lifetime, because he really reinvented the way that I look at music. And his melodies and his chord progressions really just kind of piqued my interest. And I think I'm going to try and write not more complex songs, but I'm going to try and add a little bit more of an atmosphere to the words that I write. The fourth track, we have You Don't Have to Cry. This is the song that Crosby and Stills sang at Joni Mitchell's house in Laurel Canyon, and the one that pulled Graham Nash into the harmony fold. The song itself is simple, but when those 3 voices interlock, it becomes transcendent. It's almost like the record is documenting its own origin story. Stills started writing the song as a love letter to his long-distance love interest, Judy Collins, here she is back again, to try to convince her to come live with him in California. He wrote, "In the morning when you rise, do you think of me and how you left me crying? Are you thinking of telephones and managers and where you got to be at noon? You are living a reality I left years ago, it quite nearly killed me. In the long run, it will make you cry, make you crazy and old before your time." This is, I think, one of those songs that you just have to close your eyes and embrace the harmonies around you with. First time I heard it, that's what I did. I sat down in my home studio and I put on the whole album. But when that song came along, I just had to let myself be like surrounded by the melodies, and what these guys did with their voices is incredible. And the fact that that was the first song they did was awesome. I wish that there was a recording of that day that they did that, because that would be incredible to listen to. Next up, we have Pre-Road Downs, which is a Graham Nash composition. It's a little funkier and more rock-driven than most of his Hollies work. It's got a chugging groove and playful wordplay. Here's an example from the second verse and chorus. "Felt forsaken, you'll awaken to the joys of living hand in glove, and then I will lend you my will, and your days will be filled with love. Don't run, the time approaches, hotels and midnight coaches, be sure to hide the roaches." Now, if by chance you've never heard this song before, I know what you're thinking. Why on earth are they hiding cockroaches? Well, they're not. You see, roaches is slang for a smoked joint, like the butt end, so presumably they're hiding their weed. The slick backwards guitar on this track was played by Stephen Stills, and when asked about it in particular, David Crosby said, "This is real backwards guitar, and how he got it to match up to the forward stuff, I have no idea. He did it, and we looked at him, and I thought, this guy's from effing Mars." I'm still freaked out by it. Anyway, this song shows how Graham Nash could balance Crosby and Stills' heaviness with something more buoyant. Side 1 of the album closes with Wooden Ships, co-written by Crosby, Stills, and Paul Kattner of Jefferson Airplane. This is the most psychedelic track on the record, and lyrically it's absolutely one of the darkest. It imagines survivors of a nuclear apocalypse sailing away on wooden ships to start over. The first verse sets the scene of two survivors meeting. "If you smile at me, I will understand, because that is something everybody everywhere does in the same language. I can see by your coat, my friend, you're from the other side. There's just one thing I gotta know. Can you tell me, please, who won?" And then the chorus is about them sailing away from the shoreline, where the silver people, quote unquote, in hazmat suits are watching from afar. "Wooden ships on the water, very free and easy. Easy, you know the way it's supposed to be. Silver people on the shoreline, let us be, talking about very free and easy." The harmonies here are eerie and the guitar lines are cutting. At a time when the Vietnam War and nuclear tensions were front of mind, this song resonated as a vision of both doom and escape. Side 2 opens with Lady of the Island, a delicate ballad written by Graham Nash for Joni Mitchell. It's intimate, with just his almost whispered voice and an acoustic guitar, and harmonies by David Crosby added on. There's no grand harmonies, it's just, in the back. There's no complex production. This is just Nash at his most vulnerable. A complete juxtaposition from the previous song. The lyrics here are so beautiful as well. Here's one of my favorite lines from the first verse. "Holding you close, undisturbed, before a fire, the pressure in my chest when you breathe in my ear. We both knew this would happen when you first appeared, my lady of the island." In a way, this song foreshadows the confessional singer-songwriter boom of the 1970s, and it's one of those great singer-songwriter hidden gems. So after that comes Helplessly Hoping, one of the album's true highlights. This is Stephen Stills at his lyrical best as he plays with alliteration and word patterns. Helplessly hoping, her harlequin hovers nearby, awaiting a word. Gasping at glimpses of gentle true spirit, he runs, wishing he could fly, only to trip at the sound of goodbye. The harmonies here are as fragile as glass too, rising and falling like a deep breath. The first time I heard this song, it took my breath away. I mean, it's proof that CSN could be powerful without any electric instruments at all. It was just 3 voices and an acoustic guitar for this one. Long Time Gone follows as the penultimate song on this album, written by Crosby on the night Robert Kennedy was assassinated in 1968. It's raw, passionate, and almost prophetic. Unlike much of the album, this one leans on a heavier electric groove with Stills laying down a smoky organ part. The lyrics Crosby wrote are blunt. Speak out. You gotta speak out against the madness. You gotta speak your mind if you dare. But don't now try to get yourself elected. If you do, you had better cut your hair. 'Cause it appears to be a long time before the dawn. Long Time Gone captures that late 60s feeling of disillusionment when the hope of change kept colliding with tragedy. But Crosby was keeping up the optimism with this last line. But you know, the darkest hour is always just before the dawn. And finally, the album closes with 49 Bye-Byes, another Stephen Stills composition. It's restless and almost manic. It's a breakup song dressed up as a rhythm workout. It tells the story of lovers who are working on fixing their relationship before the girl gets taken away by another man with the pretense of a better life for her. Stephen sings 49 reasons, all of them in a line, all of them good ones, all of them lies. Drifting with my lady, we're oldest of friends, need little work and there's fences to mend. Steady girl, she was my world till the drifter come, now she's gone. I let that man play his hand, I let them go, how was I to know? I'm down on my knees, nobody left to please. Now it's over, they left in the spring, her and the drifter, looking for beautiful things. Halfway through, this track blossoms into a big sort of gospel-like outro, with Stills absolutely wailing on vocals. It ends this fantastic debut record with not quiet reflection, but a burst of energy and leaving listeners wanting more. So this debut album dropped in May of 1969, and by August, Crosby, Stills and Nash were on stage at Woodstock, joined by Neil Young in only their second live performance together, and they were terrified up there. But suddenly, millions of people saw them as the voice of a generation. This record became a soundtrack for a moment when the counterculture was shifting. The mid-60s had been loud, radical, and full of utopian dreams, but by 69, things felt a bit more uncertain. The Vietnam War dragged on, protests were growing more intense, and the dream of peace and love was starting to fray. The songs on Crosby, Stills and Nash reflected that mood. They were personal and intimate, but also tinged with melancholy. This album made California feel like a place where people could reflect, regroup, and redefine themselves. That's why I want to go there. There's a certain magic about Laurel Canyon, and the connection I have with both the place and the music that's animated from it is just something I can't get over. You know what I mean? I just gotta be there. I don't know how to describe it. It's just one of those places. It was like when I went to Liverpool and I stood in the Cavern Club, and it was just one of those places. This place birthed, some of my favorite music, and I'm standing in the same place where it was made, or relatively the same place. And I just stood there and drank it in, and that's what I want to do in Laurel Canyon. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Looking back, it's clear that Crosby, Stills and Nash's debut wasn't just a collection of songs, it was a blueprint. It showed how 3 distinct voices could merge into one, how folk could meet rock without losing its intimacy, and how California, its canyons, its sunlight, and its restless energy could be translated into beautiful music. In those shimmering harmonies, you can still hear it today, the echo of a canyon night, the warmth of the coast, and the longing of a generation trying to find its voice. Well, that's all I've got time for this week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Rise Records. If you enjoyed it, please like, follow, and share it around. I really hope you'll join me again next week, as I'll be looking at how the Beatles' Rubber Soul ushered in a new psychedelic era. So, until the needle drops again, bye for now. Have a good week, everyone.